Britain learned early that armies win battles, but money wins empires. Power came not from muskets, cavalry, or marching regiments, but credit. A nation survives war only when finances endure longer than enemies. Britain mastered endurance by weaponizing economics before understanding its true consequences. This strategy emerged slowly, shaped through crisis, desperation, calculation, and opportunity. When Britain lacked manpower, it compensated through superior financial coordination. Loans replaced soldiers, taxes replaced battalions, markets replaced battlefield victories. Its empire grew because capital traveled faster than infantry could march. Britain realized control over trade routes equaled victory without open conflict. Blockades became weapons, tariffs became shields. Commerce became military strategy. Nations dependent on trade could be weakened without firing cannons. Economic pressure silently achieved outcomes armies struggled to accomplish violently. The Bank of England acted as Britain's earliest strategic command centre. It funded wars, stabilized markets, and disciplined government through financial structure. Its authority ensured Britain never fought alone, always financed intelligently. Through credit, Britain hired allies, sustained fleets, and outlasted stronger rivals. Napoleonic France discovered Britain's economic strength when military victories failed. Napoleon defeated armies, but could not defeat financial resilience guiding Britain. Every blockade he enforced met countermeasures, financed through London's unyielding networks. Britain attacked France economically, choking trade through relentless naval superiority. The continental system attempted isolating Britain from European markets entirely. But Britain responded by rerouting trade across global colonial territories. Its empire became shock absorber against European isolation, maintaining economic lifelines. Money flowed, ships sailed, and Britain resisted economic suffocation defiantly. Britain used subsidies to keep European coalitions fighting against Napoleon continuously. Gold funded armies, governments, and resistance movements across the continent. British influence extended into every European treasury through targeted assistance. Economic support weakened Napoleon more effectively than battlefield strategies alone. By war's end, Britain emerged not merely victorious, but financially ascendant. Economic warfare proved more decisive than tactical maneuvers or battlefield genius. Britain's model demonstrated the supremacy of credit over conventional combat. It built empire using strategies rivals struggled to understand or counter. Throughout the 19th century, Britain refined economic dominance into global architecture. The pound became world currency, controlling international exchange rates extensively. British insurers, merchants, and financiers dictated terms of global commerce. This influence allowed Britain to pressure nations without deploying armies. Trade treaties became tools shaping geopolitical outcomes favorable to Britain. Nations accepted British terms because alternatives threatened economic isolation. Britain weaponized access to markets, punishing rivals with commercial restrictions. Economic diplomacy replaced military confrontation across numerous regions systematically. Control over shipping lanes strengthened Britain's capacity for economic coercion. The Royal Navy ensured British merchants sailed safely while rivals suffered. Blockades during conflicts crippled economies dependent on maritime trade routes. Economic warfare became primary instrument, weakening opponents without prolonged battles. Britain recognized psychology as crucial element in economic confrontation unexpectedly. Nations feared embargoes, sanctions, and blockades more than military invasion. Markets panicked easily, and Britain exploited volatility with calculated precision. Confidence became battlefield. Rumors became ammunition. Markets became terrain. British intelligence expanded into financial surveillance, protecting national economic interests. Agents monitored trade flows, currency movements, and international credit lines. Information determined which nations required pressure or discreet financial manipulation. Knowledge became weapons shaping outcomes before negotiations officially began. The Opium Wars revealed darker aspects of Britain's economic war machine. Instead of conquest, Britain used trade imbalance as coercive device. Opium destabilized China economically, forcing treaties advantageous to British merchants. Economic pressure accomplished what armies alone could never achieve peacefully. By late 19th century, Britain commanded global finance with unmatched reach. International debts flowed through London's institutions, giving Britain immense leverage. Nations unable to repay loans often ceded strategic concessions diplomatically. Economic dependence quietly placed their sovereignty under British financial authority. The empire strengthened through credit expansion rather than territorial acquisition. Investment in colonies created infrastructures controlling trade, labor, and production. Railways, ports, and communication lines extended Britain's economic influence globally. These tools enabled domination without direct military occupation or persistent garrisons. During crises, Britain manipulated commodity prices to strategically disadvantage rivals. Controlling insurance, shipping, and contracts allowed global price interference. Economic pressure crippled nations reliant on exports Britain controlled indirectly. This strategy defeated opponents without traditional wartime declaration or mobilization. The First World War exposed limits and advantages of Britain's economic strategies. Britain financed enormous Allied coalitions through loans sourced internationally. Economic warfare included blockades targeting Germany's industrial supply chains. Cutting imports weakened German resistance more effectively than battlefield attrition. Britain weaponized food supplies, crippling Germany's civilian population and morale. Blockades created shortages, undermining German wartime production and national confidence. Economic war proved relentless, extending beyond soldiers into civilian suffering. Britain learned economies break faster than armies under sustained pressure. War debts shifted center of global finance from London to Washington. Despite this shift, Britain retained expertise structuring international monetary systems. Its financial professionals advised institutions, shaping post-war global economic governance. Influence shifted form, not substance, preserving British strategic advantage subtly. Between the wars, Britain used currency manipulation to weaken competitors silently. Devaluing the pound stimulated exports, while burdening foreign economies adversely. Britain balanced national survival with calculated economic aggression during crises. Currency became weapon, destabilizing competitors while shielding domestic industries. Sanctions evolved into more refined instrument for punishing strategic adversaries. Britain restricted oil, materials, and credit flows to hostile nations. Economic denial weakened opponents before any possibility of military escalation. Britain discovered wars could be won without firing bullets. The Second World War accelerated Britain's mastery of economic warfare dramatically. Britain survived bombing campaigns because finances secured American support effectively. Lend-Lease agreements extended Britain's endurance despite severe domestic shortages. Its financial diplomacy ensured continued supply lines critical for survival. Britain used intelligence to monitor enemy trade, currency weaknesses, and logistics. Its analysts predicted shortages crippling Axis powers long before occurrence. Economic insights informed military strategy, merging finance with battlefield planning. This fusion created unprecedented synergy between numbers and national defense. After victory, Britain entered new age where economic warfare dominated geopolitics. Armies mattered less, currencies mattered more. Supply chains determined influence. Britain used Commonwealth trade leverage to maintain post-war economic relevance. It shaped rules of commerce favoring stability aligned with British interests. Decolonization weakened direct control, but strengthened indirect economic influence cleverly. Former colonies remained tied to British banks, insurers, and trading institutions. This economic interdependence served Britain more effectively than colonial rule. Soft power replaced hard power, creating subtler yet powerful British presence. Throughout the Cold War, Britain served strategic role balancing global economics. It mediated between American capitalism and European social democratic models. Britain mastered economic diplomacy, influencing alliances through financial engagement. It shaped negotiations, ensuring Western economic unity and strategic coherence. Sanctions became Britain's preferred method for confronting geopolitical threats intelligently. It pressured adversaries without risking domestic casualties or military overreach. Economic containment built long-term strategic advantage against authoritarian regimes. Britain proved money could undermine dictators more effectively than force. By late 20th century, globalization became Britain's new battlefield environment. Corporations replaced armies, trade replaced conquest, logistics replaced territorial ambition. Britain adapted naturally, as economic warfare matched its historical evolution. The City of London became command centre for global financial influence. Financial regulations, interest rates, and investment flows shaped diplomatic negotiations. Britain weaponized investment, granting or restricting access based on compliance. Nations adjusted policies to secure British financial participation voluntarily. Economic leverage accomplished influence traditional empires previously used force achieving. Modern Britain refined sanctions into complex network, disrupting enemy economies strategically. It targeted individuals, banks, industries, and entire national financial systems. Precision sanctions crippled leadership without punishing civilian populations severely. This sophisticated approach redefined warfare for digital age geopolitics. Cyber warfare integrated with economic strategy to expand British capabilities. Attacks on financial infrastructure became potential tools for deterrence. Britain developed cyber defenses, protecting markets, banks, and global capital. Digital threats were met with digital countermeasures, strengthening economic resilience. The 21st century confirmed Britain's transformation into economic superpower subtly. Its army shrank, but financial influence expanded through global entanglement. Britain controlled flows of capital crucial to international prosperity generally. Nations cooperated because economic interdependence bound them to British systems. Economic warfare now dominates conflicts where armies remain unused deliberately. Britain leads coalitions weaponizing trade restrictions, financial blacklists, and embargoes. These measures damage opponents without risking military confrontation or miscalculation. The battlefield moved from trenches to banks, screens, and global markets. Britain's mastery lies in adaptability, secrecy, and institutional intelligence accumulated carefully. It understands economic pressure outlasts violence, shaping nations psychologically. Empires fall, currencies fluctuate, alliances shift, but economic leverage remains. Britain built machinery turning financial strategy into modern form of warfare. The Cold War pushed Britain deeper into invisible battlefields shaped economically. Ideology mattered, but currencies, trade routes, and loans mattered far more. Britain became master mediator between American capitalism and European cautiousness. Its experience navigating empire prepared it for balancing conflicting economic systems. Britain used expertise in sanctions, embargoes, and subtle supply restrictions effectively. It understood starving economies of resources, weakened governments psychologically and politically. Economic pressure rarely provoked immediate retaliation from targeted authoritarian regimes. This subtlety made Britain's methods extremely effective across volatile regions worldwide. While superpowers threatened mutually assured destruction, Britain threatened bankruptcy instead. Credit became weapon, trade became leverage. Investment became geopolitical negotiation. This approach allowed Britain influence, disproportionate to its shrinking military capacities. Economic warfare permitted quiet dominance without attracting global suspicion or criticism. London became a crucial hub for regulating global capital during political tensions. Money fleeing unstable regions flowed safely through British banking channels. This influx strengthened Britain's ability to dictate financial terms internationally. Nations cooperated because rejecting British capital jeopardized long-term economic viability. Britain mastered duality, presenting itself conciliatory while acting decisively economically. It offered diplomacy publicly, but applied pressure quietly through strategic financial decisions. This contradiction granted flexibility armies or militaries could never safely achieve. Economic warfare granted silence, where conventional warfare demanded spectacle and visibility. Oil crisis transformed economic warfare into globally recognized instrument of survival. Britain maneuvered through energy turmoil using financial engineering and strategic partnerships. It leveraged North Sea oil to reinforce national security and geopolitical bargaining. Energy revenue strengthened Britain's resilience against market turbulence and global instability. Meanwhile, Britain coordinated with allies imposing embargoes on hostile governments. Economic isolation weakened regimes more effectively than overt military confrontation. Sanctions restricted technology, financing, materials, and global credit access. Britain targeted vulnerabilities precisely, undermining adversaries without direct confrontation. The Falklands conflict proved Britain still required military power occasionally, but victory relied heavily on financial stability, ensuring campaign financial viability. Money sustained logistics, diplomacy, intelligence, and long-term strategic operational flexibility. Even war demonstrated financial strength overshadowed battlefield achievements decisively. As industrialization shifted eastwards, Britain reinvented itself once again. Manufacturing declined, but the financial sector grew into national fortress. The City of London became central node within global economic networks. Its institutions harnessed capital flows, shaping worldwide markets daily. Britain's economic war machine expanded beyond government, involving corporations quietly. Multinational firms influenced trade policy, investment flows, and international negotiations. Corporate decisions affected foreign governments more profoundly than parliamentary resolutions. Power migrated into boardrooms, where economic strategies replaced military tactics. Britain's legal system became a powerful extension of economic influence globally. Contracts governed disputes worldwide, using English law for stability and predictability. This created dependency, ensuring nations relied on British courts for arbitration. Judicial authority reinforced economic leverage without appearing politically motivated. During tensions, Britain weaponized law by restricting certain entities' legal protections. Removing access to English courts effectively crippled hostile governments' activities. Legal exclusion became economic punishment, carrying severe international financial consequences. Britain demonstrated courts could act like battalions without physical casualties. As global markets digitized, Britain expanded economic warfare into new domains. Algorithms traded faster than diplomats negotiated, shaping real-time geopolitical effects. Britain adapted using regulations, oversight, and guidance influencing automated financial behavior. Its leadership directed stability across markets vulnerable to technological overreaction. Currency speculation became a powerful tool for influencing national decision-making processes. Rapid capital outflows destabilized governments reliant on foreign investor confidence. Britain understood these dynamics, using them strategically during crucial negotiations. Economic turbulence pressured leaders more effectively than military threats or sanctions. The rise of emerging markets introduced new frontiers for British influence. Nations sought investment, expertise, and legal infrastructure from London's institutions. Britain used this demand to shape policies encouraging global economic integration. It guided development using incentives, subtly reinforcing British economic philosophies. Britain expanded soft power through educational and financial professional training programs. Future leaders studied in London, learning frameworks guiding international economic governance. They internalized British approaches to risk, regulation, and monetary policy. These alumni later shaped global economies aligned with British financial principles. Economic intelligence strengthened significantly, merging data analysis with human expertise. Britain monitored commodity movements, financial flows, capital migrations, and supply chains. Insights allowed prediction of crises, enabling proactive strategic economic maneuvers. Intelligence turned markets into maps, revealing national vulnerabilities with precision. Britain weaponized transparency paradoxically, exposing corruption within hostile governments publicly. Leaks destabilized regimes by eroding public trust and international investor confidence. Economic weakness often followed, pressuring leaders into negotiations against disadvantage. Soft power achieved objectives, previously requiring significant military resources historically. Britain's regulatory decisions carried global consequences during international economic tensions. Sanctions lists determined which corporations could access international capital markets. Financial restrictions crippled industries dependent on British or Allied cooperation. Regulation became battlefield where compliance replaced conventional military surrender. Economic warfare expanded into cybersecurity as digital threats intensified rapidly. Attacks targeted banks, payment networks, and critical financial infrastructure globally. Britain defended networks while developing offensive strategies quietly for deterrence. Cyber capabilities reinforced economic dominance rather than replacing traditional methods. Throughout crises, markets looked to Britain for stabilizing guidance consistently. The pound's fluctuations influenced global sentiment regardless of domestic circumstances. Investors trusted British institutions to navigate unpredictable market landscapes effectively. Trust transformed into power, enabling Britain to maneuver strategically during chaos. Britain weaponized foreign investment screening to block hostile strategic acquisitions. It prevented rivals from gaining control over critical national infrastructure sectors. Investment restrictions acted like defensive shields, protecting national economic independence. These measures strengthened sovereignty without engaging in military confrontation. During geopolitical standoffs, Britain directed capital movements, shaping adversary behavior. Freezing assets inflicted damage surpassing traditional sanctions or diplomatic pressure. Targeted leaders felt immediate personal consequences, altering strategic calculations quickly. Britain proved wealth immobilization influenced political decisions more effectively than armies. Financial alliances strengthened Britain's influence in multilateral organizations significantly. G7, IMF, World Bank, and other institutions reflected British economic philosophy. These bodies enforced policies indirectly advancing British global financial interests. Rules dictated by institutions shaped economies without visible political interference. Britain manipulated commodity markets by influencing pricing mechanisms internationally. Its exchanges determined benchmark values, impacting global economic stability. Control over pricing equaled control over producers, consumers, and dependent nations. Britain weaponized commodities indirectly, shaping strategic behavior through economic vulnerability. Offshore networks extended Britain's reach to global private capital seamlessly. These jurisdictions allowed capital movement despite geopolitical or regulatory constraints. Economic warfare leveraged these structures to undermine hostile financial systems. Britain operated through complexity, creating influence difficult for rivals confronting. Modern sanctions became precise tools, targeting industries vital for national survival. Energy exports, technology access, financial clearing, and international banking connectivity. Britain cut lifelines without firing shots, breaking economies internally. Pressure forced adversaries into concessions unattainable through traditional diplomacy. The City of London remained economic command centre, coordinating global pressure. Its financial institutions monitored sanctions compliance across interconnected markets. Their cooperation ensured restrictions reached every corner of global commerce. Economic isolation became nearly absolute when Britain engaged multilaterally. Britain's strength came from understanding interdependence inside globalized financial systems. Rivals could not retaliate easily without harming themselves economically first. This asymmetry protected Britain while allowing offensive economic maneuvers. Global systems made Britain's influence structurally unavoidable for hostile nations. The 21st century blurred lines between financial conflict and geopolitical competition. Britain prepared for an era where wars occur through spreadsheets, not trenches. Its economic war machine evolved faster than military rivals imagined. Britain fought silently, but consequences echoed loudly across global civilization. The 21st century transformed economic warfare into civilization's dominant battleground silently. Armies marched less, currencies moved more. Numbers replaced bullets permanently. Britain adapted instantly. Understanding conflicts now lived inside global financial systems. Power shifted from land to liquidity, from armies to algorithms. Economic war became multidimensional, blending finance, intelligence, cybersecurity, and geopolitical negotiation. Britain used these tools with sophistication unmatched by contemporary global rivals. Its strategy relied on influence, interdependence, discretion, and institutional longevity. This approach allowed Britain leverage without provoking direct military escalation. Sanctions became sharper, targeted, and strategically precise under British guidance. They targeted individuals, corporations, ministries, and entire national revenue streams. Britain distinguished between symbolic punishment and strategically crippling economic pressure. Its decisions shaped behavior of nations far beyond geographical British borders. Investment restrictions evolved into powerful tools controlling adversarial strategic expansion. Britain blocked acquisitions threatening national security or international stability significantly. Its authority guided allies implementing coordinated defensive economic measures globally. Investment became shield, preventing rivals from gaining critical global advantages. Regulatory power extended Britain's influence into international corporate behavior continuously. Companies followed British rules because compliance guaranteed market access internationally. Non-compliance risked sanctions, reputational damage, and global commercial isolation. Thus, corporate obedience reinforced British economic authority across modern markets. Britain wielded currency influence strategically, shaping international financial expectations carefully. The pound's fluctuations signaled global sentiment during sensitive geopolitical developments. Financial markets reacted instantly to British monetary decisions and announcements. Currency behavior became subtle instrument guiding diplomatic and economic outcomes. Banks served as frontline soldiers within Britain's modern economic conflicts. Their compliance determined strength of sanctions, restrictions, and global enforcement. British institutions monitored suspicious flows, protecting national security against covert threats. This vigilance formed defense perimeter far beyond Britain's physical territory. Cyber warfare emerged as pivotal arena, shaping Britain's economic strategies. Hostile actors targeted markets, aiming to destabilize financial infrastructure rapidly. Britain responded by integrating cybersecurity into national economic defense systems. Its digital resilience allowed survival where others faced catastrophic disruption. Intelligence services expanded focus onto economic vulnerabilities of adversaries internationally. They tracked investments, capital migrations, commodity dependencies, and illicit networks. These insights allowed Britain to design pressure targeting weaknesses accurately. Economic strikes became precise, informed, and devastatingly effective globally. Britain used transparency selectively, exposing corruption to destabilize enemy leadership, revealing hidden wealth fractured domestic legitimacy inside targeted authoritarian governments. Public outrage weakened political foundations without requiring military intervention whatsoever. Information became bomb capable of detonating entire governmental structures. Diplomacy merged with financial pressure, creating hybrid negotiation frameworks internationally. Britain offered aid, investment, or trade concessions in exchange for stability. Refusing conditions risked sanctions, isolation, or loss of economic partnerships. Carrot and stick merged seamlessly within Britain's evolving strategic doctrine. The City of London became operational headquarters for global economic warfare. Its stock exchanges, banks, insurers, and legal firms coordinated international strategy. Every sanction passed through London before impacting hostile financial systems. Britain's reach extended through institutions embedded deeply inside global commerce. Global supply chains increased vulnerability, giving Britain new leverage mechanisms. Restricting access to finance paralyzed supply networks essential for national survival. Britain targeted choke points within logistics, manufacturing, and critical resource distribution. One restriction could collapse production networks spanning multiple geographic regions. Financial inclusion became weapon controlling, which nations accessed global prosperity. Britain guided international development banks, shaping emerging market economies strategically. Those aligned with British standards received advantageous investment opportunities quickly. Those diverging faced expensive borrowing terms, instability, and international hesitation. Energy markets became theatres for Britain's economic warfare simultaneously. Control over trading platforms allowed shaping prices, influencing geopolitical decisions. Britain leveraged market intelligence to predict vulnerabilities in energy-dependent adversaries. Predictive insights translated directly into tailored economic pressure, applied strategically. Britain weaponized offshore jurisdictions subtly to influence political stability elsewhere. Capital relocation undermined governments unable to sustain fiscal obligations domestically. Nations collapsed financially when elites moved wealth into British-linked havens. Britain understood capital mobility destabilized regimes without firing any weapons. Insurance markets became hidden extensions of Britain's economic war machine. Refusing coverage effectively halted operations of hostile national industries entirely. Without insurance, ships stalled, factories paused, and exports froze globally. Britain controlled these decisions without appearing overtly aggressive politically. Britain also manipulated regulatory recognition to strengthen geopolitical alliances strategically. Granting market access created goodwill, revoking access created immediate economic shockwaves. Rivals relied heavily on British certification for international commercial legitimacy. Thus, Britain wielded recognition as another subtle but powerful coercive instrument. The digital age amplified Britain's ability to project economic pressure. Real-time monitoring allowed offensive actions executed with flawless synchronicity. Digital sanctions froze assets instantly, paralyzing targeted leadership overnight. Britain controlled speed, precision, and effect unmatched by conventional warfare. Artificial intelligence accelerated Britain's capacity to analyze global financial vulnerabilities. AI predicted crises long before human analysts detected emerging patterns. This predictive power allowed Britain to intervene strategically before escalation. Anticipation became shield protecting national and allied financial stability. The globalization era matured Britain's economic warfare capabilities catastrophically and effectively. Trade networks interconnected entire civilization, creating fragile chains of dependence. Britain leveraged this interdependence to shape decisions beyond diplomatic negotiation. Power emanated from London into systems nations required to maintain prosperity. Economic conflict now defined world order more than military confrontation. Nations feared sanctions, asset freezes, and credit withdrawal more severely. Britain harnessed this fear, shaping global politics without battlefield presence. Its influence persisted despite reduced military size or imperial dominance. The future of warfare belongs to nations mastering economic influence. Britain stands prepared, having shaped this battlefield for centuries already. Its experience, institutions, intelligence, and financial networks remain unmatched globally. The economic war machine continues evolving, sophisticated, silent, and strategically unstoppable. If this story revealed how modern wars are truly fought, remember, power now lives in money, not in marching armies. Subscribe for more untold histories shaping the hidden machinery of influence. Because the next global battle will begin inside a spreadsheet.